right, welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast post-game edition. I am coming to you off of an Eagles 28-22 victory at home against the Los Angeles Rams. Guys, we're in the NFC freaking championship game, and it's in Philadelphia. Huge, huge, huge win yesterday. And I'm recording you Monday morning. Had today off for Martin Luther King's Day. This was a big day. Yesterday was a big game. The Eagles, from start to finish, it was crazy. I got to give the Rams credit. The Rams did a really, really, really good job. I think the offense for the Rams was consistent. The defensive line was creating issues for us all day. And obviously, it was a crazy weather game, right? The first quarter of this game was pretty mellow and things got going right away. I think you kind of saw the strategies from both teams kind of, how it changed from the beginning to the end of this game. And you could see all the crazy pictures in this game from how it started, how it finished in the fourth. Um, but there's a lot to unpack here. But obviously, the most important thing is that we won. And I do think, again, this was a game where we didn't play our best game, but we made the biggest plays in the biggest moments, and it mainly came from the defensive side of the ball, especially when it came to closing out this game, right? But I want to start with the whole conversation of Jalen Hurts. Listen, 120 some yards. He was 15 of 20, but he also broke off a huge run in the first quarter, really set the tone, made a statement right away with a 44-yard touchdown run, which was pretty hype. I was super excited for that. But listen, context involved. He made some great critical plays, but he also took some bad sacks and took a safety, but he didn't turn the ball over. Right. And maybe the safety, I guess, in a way could count as a turnover because the Rams get the ball back. But I thought, given everything that was happening, he did a good job. I think overall, there was a few missed opportunities. AJ had a couple drops in this game. Devontae, it was a contested throw, so that one might not have taken as much into it. But then the Goddard screen that got called back for the illegal man downfield. If those kind of hit, we're talking about him having a 200 some yard game, and I think people would be talking about it less and be more impressed. So I do think there was some opportunities left on the field, and despite that, we still were in relative control of this game for the majority of the game. Obviously, the end definitely got a little bit hectic. The Rams were able to engineer a comeback. They were down 28-15 after Saquon Barkley broke his second 70-plus yard run of the game to make it 28-15 with about 5 minutes left in the game, and it felt like it was over. But then the Rams stormed back, scored a touchdown to make it 28-22, and then the Eagles just couldn't capitalize, right? The Eagles they started with a run on first down, and then they tried to get cute and do this play action with Jalen, which he took a huge sack, and it set the Rams up to have one more chance. But then it came down to the man of the hour, and it was Jalen Carter who sealed the deal. And the Rams were storming. Puka had this insane catch. It was a huge gain, and I was sitting there thinking like, oh my god, it's actually going to happen. We're actually going to lose this game. And then it was 3rd and 2. Jalen Carter just comes up, blows up the play, and sandwiches Matt Stafford. And then Matt Stafford couldn't complete the 4th down to seal the deal. So, and then now here we are hosting a championship game against the Washington Commanders, no less. It's not even the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about that in a second, but in the sense of like things could not have lined up better for Philly this entire playoff run. I'm as content as could possibly be for how things have turned out. So Jalen Hurts, I think, was an up and down game. I think all things considered, because you want to say, okay, here the weather was bad, but Matt Stafford was out here kind of slinging in the weather too, and Jalen made good throws. But I think the sacks are going to be a topic of interest of like how many negative plays can we take when we talk about net passing yards. This team only had 65 net passing yards when you take the sacks. The Rams sacked us 7 times for 60 plus yards. That's huge. The Rams D-line stepped up. They were talking all that trash Jared Verse was all week long, and he backed it up. He played an amazing game. So the Rams have a bright future ahead of them in terms of how their defense is going to look. That defensive front is going to be nasty for years to come. But so is the Eagles' defensive line. The Eagles got 5 sacks on Matt Stafford, and one where it mattered the most. So I think overall, I was extremely happy with how this team played. It was a back and forth game. It was a contested game. The Rams gave us their best punch. And it felt like even when the Eagles were playing their B game, they were still in relative control of this game. And It was funny how the whole talk this week is, oh, they're going to be able to slow down Saquon. This defensive front has what it takes. And they didn't. Saquon ran for 200 yards, through 205 yards on this team with 2 touchdowns, 270-plus yard runs. He only becomes the second player in NFL history to do that, and that was in 1940. So Saquon Barkley, special game. It was a top 5 rushing game all time in the playoffs. It was a historic day, and that's exactly what you sign up for when you have Saquon Barkley. Having Saquon come in here and just be able to impact this team the way he has, this was exactly what we got him for the playoffs, right? We talked about the whole, is he going to go for the rushing record? Should they have done it? And this is exactly why. And we're winning, and he's the main reason for it. And you gotta give this team credit for sticking to their guns. And this is exactly what you're supposed to see with Saquon Barkley, right? So I'm extremely excited that he had the performance that he has, and there's no reason to believe that he can't sustain it. And this was going to be the case whether it was the Lions or the Commanders, right? The Commanders are going to be a tough matchup. When we talk about this next week, Ben and I are definitely going to go more in depth on it. But just from what we saw, there's going to be, I already know this with the discourse around the Philadelphia Eagles, it's going to be, okay, is this passing offense capable enough to beat this Commanders team and keep up with this Commanders offense who just dropped 45 on the Lions, even though the Lions have still been hurt. They played one good defensive game in week 18, and people were acting like this was a good defensive team for Detroit when they have been struggling for the second half of the season because of all these injuries. And just because they were rested didn't mean they were any less injured. They were still missing so many guys. And to just expect that Lions defense to shut down a Commander's offense that is extremely efficient and effective, that was going to be a tough ask. And next week is going to be a very interesting setup because it's at Lincoln Financial Field. I think the interesting is the Detroit Lions, when you're playing in that dome, it's an extremely hostile environment to play in. But then you don't have to worry about wind. You don't have to worry about the elements, right? That added factor. The intensity of the loudness of the arena might be there, but when nothing changes around you that can affect your play, it's more in your control. I think that's an easier circumstance to go through versus when you're playing in Philly and the weather's crazy. If this was a snow game and these two teams meet up, if it's snowing next week, anything can happen, and that's what makes it so interesting. And I think that's what makes this environment in Philadelphia perfect for playoff football. Like yesterday, what happened with the snow and everything, this was January football. Like, this was so cool to see. Both teams gave it their all. It was a high intensity game. And when we look at these matchups, I'm just excited. We get a rematch with the Commanders. I really wanted that third matchup. I thought we were going to get it in round 1. So to get it in an NFC title game is going to be very intense. This is a cool situation for the Commanders. This is a great situation for Jaden Daniels to get that much needed experience and for him to make history. There's going to be a lot of people wanting that. The Commanders are the team of the year in terms of people loving their energy, people loving how fun they are, and Jaden Daniels defying the odds. So the question is, will he be able to do that against this Philadelphia Eagles team? When we talk about what he did last time, he had 5 touchdowns, he had that game winner, but he also threw 4 interceptions, and the Eagles forced 5 turnovers on this Washington team, and there's no reason to believe that they can't force turnovers again. And in a playoff game, it's going to be way different, right? And not to mention, hopefully, we'll have Jalen Hurts from start to finish. And that was a huge reason that they won the second time the Commanders did, was because Jalen Hurts goes out early, the Eagles' momentum gets stopped, and they weren't able to pull off the victory. The Eagles were doing whatever they wanted offensively to start that game, and once Kenny Pickett came in the game off the injury, they stalled out and they were just selling out on Saquon. And listen, if they want to sell out on Saquon this week, that's going to be fine. I still believe in Jalen Hurts being able to make those plays, make big plays when it matters, and he was able to prove that this week. I do think, again, you're taking questionable sacks. You took that safety. Like, those were tough things to do, but at the end of the day, you have 0 turnovers on your profile. Like, we won the turnover battle 2-0, and it really came down to, when we talk about the Rams game and the Eagles, I think Jalen Carter made all the difference in the fourth quarter. When you force that fumble on Kyren Williams that gets brought back to the 10. Listen, we didn't score a touchdown, but that was a huge one. And then you get a strip sack from Nolan Smith on Matt Stafford, and Zach Bond picks it up on back-to-back possessions in the fourth, and that really stalled any momentum the Rams had before they were able to get it until the end. So this Eagles defense is capable of forcing turnovers. In the past 5 games, we've forced 16 turnovers. That's including the playoff games. So This team is playing its best ball right now, and everyone was talking about, oh, they're going to miss N'Kobe Dean. Oren Burks played incredible today. So I'm telling you guys, like, this defense has what it takes. Quinyon Mitchell went out for this game. Isaiah Rodgers got burned a couple times, but Isaiah made some good plays. Obviously, you don't want to let him rip the ball from you. Demarcus Robinson, I believe, got that catch, but overall, I think Isaiah Rodgers is a capable corner, and he's been very good in backup roles this year. But we'll get the reports have come out on Quinyon. He dinged up his shoulder, but he should be good to go next week, which is great because I need that scary Quinyon Mitchell round 3 matchup. So it's going to be fun playing a divisional opponent at home for for the right to go to the Super Bowl this year, and this is going to be a crazy game. And I'm so excited for what we're going to see, what the Commanders have in store for us offensively and defensively. But I think when if you ask any Eagles fan, I think this was the matchup we were wanting. I get it that this was a whole crash course to it felt like the Eagles and the Lions were on a collision course. And the Lions sold. The Lions didn't take care of business at home against the team they should have beaten. And the Commanders have, continued to defy the odds on the road. So when it comes to playing on the road, it's going to be, I don't think it shakes the Commanders that much, but you're coming back to Philly. It's a hostile environment. It's in the playoffs this time, and we don't know what the weather's going to be yet. So we'll, find that out later in the week, but it's going to be the toughest environment of the playoffs yet. You're not playing in the warm in Tampa Bay or in a dome in Detroit. You're playing out in the freezing cold here in Philly. So there's going to be a lot to look forward to in this matchup. And I'm really, really excited. So I want to circle back to the Rams game. I want to talk, hand out some game balls. Obviously, the game ball for this one's going to go to Saquon Barkley. When you have a top 5 all-time playoff performance, you deserve a game ball. And this is exactly, again, you step up. This is exactly why you were brought to this team. This is exactly why you joined this team, was to have this kind of success and to have a run for a Super Bowl. And now he's in prime position to be able to make plays in this one. And you could tell just how hyped he was, especially on the second 70-yard touchdown run. He was banging his helmet. He was in it. Like, you could feel the energy coming from Saquon, like how much he wants this and how much he just wants to be successful. And that emulates with Philly. I thought it was a super cool moment for Saquon to just be able to take over like that. And I'm going to give Jalen Hurts a game ball too. Sounds a little homerish. I don't really care, because what does he do? He continues to put this team in positions to win. And, when he set the tone with a 44-yard touchdown run to start the game, like, that's why I never doubt Jalen. That's why no matter what, he will always find a way to win and always find a way to contribute. And, him and Saquon are the only teammates in NFL, or first teammates in a long time, I forget the exact year, to have 40-yard plus touchdown runs in a postseason game. So that was also really cool. And that's the dynamic of this offense, is we're able to run it down your throat. And on the defensive side, I have to give a ball to Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter did everything you could ask for. This guy stepped up in the biggest moments possible. He took over the fourth quarter for our defense. He was the main reason that they did not win this game. When you have that sack on 3rd and 2 with under a minute left, and you just sandwich Matt Stafford, they bent him super weird, and and that set him up for the game sealing 4th down. And then when you force the fumble early, the Eagles had just given up a safety. It was 16-15. The Rams were right there, and Kyren Williams gets, punched out by Jalen Carter. And that sets the stage. Like, when you do that, and then Nolan Smith forces the fumble on the other one, when you get 2 back-to-back turnovers, you win the turnover battle. He had that Aaron Donald, Chris Jones type moment in that game where you seal the deal when the team is pushing. So that was such a cool signature moment by Jalen Carter, and that's exactly why I believed in him when we were able to get him in the draft. When we did, it was a steal at the 9th overall pick. So for him to be able to make that big of a moment was exactly why you draft him as high as you do. The reason you believe in him as much as you do, because he's able to make those kind of plays. So shout out Jalen Carter for stepping up in the biggest of moments. I was so hyped to see that. So a lot of ups and downs in this game, but the Eagles survive and advance. That's the whole point. And I know the discussion is going to be, will this offense be able to get it done? I don't think it matters, dude. I really don't. Like, we talk about this every single week this season. Will this offense be able to do enough through the air? We don't need it. We don't need to do that through the air. Apparently, we just need 150 yards and then 200 from our running game, and we're going to be able to get the job done. and it'll be interesting to see what the approach is. Ben and I will talk about this matchup with the Commanders more in depth this week, but we're moving on to the NFC title game in Philly. I'm stoked. And this was as good as a win as you can get. This was an all-time win in in recent playoff history for this team. When you talk about just the intensity, the snow, the craziness, like this was huge. And now we're 7-0 as a franchise in divisional home games, and that streak continues. So I want to see this team improve even more. I think we're gonna find a rhythm. It's gonna come down to how healthy is Jalen Hurts. He did land awkwardly. He got twisted up when he got sacked early. It was either in the third or the fourth, but he came back and finished the game. But that will be something to monitor: is how healthy is he? Will he be able to run next week? That will make a big difference, because his threat through the ground is going to be, that's what adds this element to this team. So it will be interesting to see. That's going to be the important thing to monitor, but we can win this week. We are as set up as any team to win the Super Bowl. This defense is more than capable of slowing down this Commanders offense and forcing turnovers. Maybe it's going to still be a high scoring game, but if we can create those critical turnovers while not turning the ball over ourselves, that's been the recipe this year, and it's worked. So I'm interested to see what happens, but I think I'll close it out here. We got a busy week ahead of us, too much to talk about, but this is the Behind the Back Pod post-game edition, divisional round win for the Philadelphia Eagles. My name is Marcos Conan Negron. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any of our social medias. Their descriptions to each are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, follow, review the show. We really appreciate all the love and support. And hopefully I get to talk about next week. We're doing a post-game pod where the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. One more win to the Super Bowl. So let's get through this week. Let's survive in advance one more time and go over to Nolan's, baby. All right, guys. I love y'all. I'll talk to you during the week. Peace. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby.